Pana kupuna na ula. E ho mai ka ike. O e i hola. Lo.
Anyway, our purpose is to go with Dr. Cordy today is to really understand this wahi pana from the archaeological perspective and mapping and to know the sites. So we're gonna go to Punana Ula on the way up, and then we'll point out some of the areas.
Malama Waianae Moku is my mission. I am Tara from the Sea Grant, Hawaii right now. My passion is education and conservation. So stoked to be here to check out Punana Ula.
In 20 years, the stories of what we're doing today will be told by the next generation.
Aloha mai, o Paris ko uinoa. I'm here to gain as much ike and mana'o as I can and be an asset in any place on the island that I can.
Yeah, just here for kuleana.
Well, obviously I'm Ross. I'm a professor at UH West Oahu. I teach Hawaiian and Pacific Studies. We have a Hawaiian Studies and Pacific Island Studies program stuck together. I've been there for about 25 years. Before that, I was the state archaeologist for 15 years with the Historic Preservation Movement. So I'm half trained as an archaeologist and half trained as a historian using oral histories and stuff like that. So I get lumped as an archaeologist a lot. But when I look at the land, I look at the way it was like 200 years ago. That's sort of what I think of. And so I use oral histories and stuff to kind of, and archaeology to kind of reconstruct the history of the past. I've been doing this for like 50 years, so more than most of you guys have been around. But we have been working out here since 1997. The back of all the valleys along this side have, the back of the valleys have lots of historic sites that are still there. And that's actually really unique on Oahu. The back of Waianae here probably has the biggest cultural landscape that's left. Literally you walk into the trees and you're into the cultural landscape. So field ruins, house ruins, there's a whole range of heiau from family heiau all the way up to 3 great big heiau that were probably associated with the overlord chiefs and stuff. So it's literally the biggest landscape and probably the most important landscape that's left on Oahu, because Waianae Valley itself was the central focus of the whole coast over there. So that when the High Chief came over on this side, this is where he lived. He lived down there near where the Mormon Church and the Baptist Church are down there behind Palilahau Park. There's one in Lulule, there's one in Makaha, and there's one further out. But there's like 12 in this valley. So that shows you this valley was the political center, the religious center. It had the biggest population on this side. And it had tons of irrigated kalo. But anyway, we've been documenting the historic sites in the back of the valley since 1997. And it's been a combination of, as Eric was saying, Waianae High School had a Hawaiian Studies program, and the students were coming out, we were teaching them how to map, do like professional archaeological maps. There's easily over 40 or 50 house sites in the back of the valley. So what we're trying to do is get this landscape preserved. I guess that's an easy way to say it. We're trying to nominate to what's called the National Register of Historic Places. That doesn't ensure it's preserved, but it gives it greater publicity and potentially greater protection. Well, for the fire prevention out here, we've talked about doing check dams in the intermittent stream. And you can get little pools of water and you can plant native trees. The focal thing, what we've been trying to do is to emphasize is you've got a really unique cultural landscape out here. Again, it's probably the biggest one and the most important one that's left on Oahu. And you don't really want to lose it, basically. This all used to be Waianae Valley Ranch. The way we got involved in the 1997 was the ranch was, the lease was coming up and they had a neighborhood board meeting and the ranch folks said there was nothing out here. And Punana Heiau was recorded by the Bishop Museum in the 1930s. The Bishop Museum was sending people out in the 1930s to identify like fish ponds and big structures like Heiau. Punana got identified, but they said nothing was there, but we knew Punana was actually in the ranch territory, that the ranch was wrong. This was a huge landscape. One of the things what we found in doing those surveys in 1997 was this structure. And you go up, we'll go up and when you go to Punana stream's just over here. You go up a little further and there's another big heiau right next to Punana stream, and then you go way up and it's Punana heiau. But these two lower heiau are almost as big as Punana, and the Bishop Museum wasn't told about them in the 1930s. So apparently they've been forgotten by that point in time, at least as far as we can tell. But this is a great big structure. Whenever you see structures like this, if they're great big with massive walls like this, you're looking at probably something that's a major heiau. So that's one, when you do stuff with historic sites, you have to be very careful. So, protecting them is a little more complicated than typically you think. And so that's one key thing is, whenever you do projects in this area, we just want to make sure that you're really careful. The projects aren't going to impact the historic sites. There's ways to improve the historic sites, like if the walls have collapsed. You can do some work on restoring walls and stuff, but you have to be really careful you don't change the style of the wall. But this is one of the three major heiaus. So there's three major heiau in the back. There's the one at Pōkē Bay, Kulealoa, that survives today. There's one on the end of the ridge here when you go down, kind of back from the high school, but it's up on the ridge. There might be one kind of at the mouth of the stream, way down at the front. But there used to be like 12 major heiau in this valley, or nine, somewhere between 9 and 12. And so that shows you the importance of this valley. One of the reasons we want to protect this is if you look at the ridge lines and stuff, the ridge lines are pretty much like they would have looked like centuries ago, yeah? And so you've got stories, there's stories in the oral histories that talk about Kaiona. Kaiona was the goddess that was the protector of the Waianae range. And so we've tracked down a couple of those stories. There's the squiggly marks on the cliff here have a story that goes with it. And then on the top of the ridge line over here, there's stories about goddesses and stuff on top of the ridge too. But that's the interesting thing. You've got the archaeological landscape, but it's embedded in the natural landscape, and it's also embedded in the oral historical landscape, which makes this really unique back here. And then there's other stories that take place down in the front, obviously too. But this is one of the three big heiau. They're all about the same size. They're a little bit different. This one's kind of massive walls. The next one is really tall with kind of trapezoidal walls. In one of the high school classes, we started to clear that one, but we didn't get all the way through it. And then Punana is the one way at the top that's a little bit larger than the others, but not much. Punana is two big platforms, and I've actually brought a map of Punana too. That's, you see, there's a Bishop Museum guy that was up here, was called McAllister in the 1930s. But his map isn't really super accurate, but that one is. So for most of the 1700s, Oahu was the biggest kingdom. It was the first kingdom to expand to multiple islands. They track the seasons through star rising and setting.
And weather patterns. Mm-hmm. These are, when you look over here at this landscape, what do you see? Population. Because you had standard that says huge numbers, and then you have somebody else that says different numbers. This back to life as it was 200 to 300 years ago is what we want to try and duplicate.
So Waianae was the only land along the Waianae side that had a flowing stream all year round to the shore.
Running from there, it runs all the way up because the wind's going to push them. Went above the fire break and it dropped down, and this whole forest over here burned. It's dry now, so something's going on. And so that's why if the fire escapes there, what we want to do is create some green fire breaks over here.
Is the only irrigated kalo fields on Punana Stream are right up here. Nothing further down. So the stream gets narrower as you go further down. But the other stream, if you look right behind you here, that's Kumaipo. And Kumaipo flowed, and Kumaipo's got irrigated kalo fields all up along it. And then the ridge line between Punana and Kumaipo is kind of flat and it's dry. That's what burned. It had dryland fields all the way down it. And there's house sites out on this ridge.
Kelei mai la o ka una I ke kai ea o ka malama lama o ni I hau a mani e ka wahine no ka lua no I ki lau e ai.
So you guys that just came up, this is the first lo'i. There's a Y that runs up this direction. There's a stone about a couple hundred feet up, and the Punana comes right out from underneath that stone. And then the channel there comes right along the edge, and so there's an Y that runs right along the edge here. And it used to flow through the Y. I notice it's kind of blocked up in places, but if the Y is cleaned up, and then the channel down there is straightened up again where the cows messed it up, you probably will get some flow down there. And maybe that last lo'i that used to be super swampy, maybe the water will come back in there too. If you go up the trail, right off the trail, there's a house site up on the top. And I brought a map of it, but I didn't bring it here. And a little further over, you go straight across and you hit Kumaipo where it drops down. And then you walk down that ridge and then you get, and Kumaipo swings around and it drops down, and then you can walk up the other side and you're at well one. But there's a couple of house sites on this ridge, as well as it all being terraced. So it's terraced right against the base of the ridge. And that's Kavivi. A little further up, that's the fortification ridge. So if you guys think we're coming up, Punana is literally right there. As you're walking down, the stones are right there. And if some of you guys, if one of your projects is to clear off Punana, is you want to clear it off and pile the stuff away from the structure, yeah? But there's a couple of smaller structures on the other side on the rise. So we've got maps of it, and you guys can see the maps if you're clearing it. But that's, if you bring kupuna up here to look, it'd be good to have it cleared off.
The why and ʻāina gave back. Take care of the land take care of you.
When you up on Punana and you're looking at Kaʻala, that's Maui right there. Yeah, so that was where Maui was born. Yep, and he captured the sun, yeah, and all that. So it's not Maui, the island, it's Nanakuli. And that's what Punana means, yeah. So the virginity of all this place is right there.
This area back here was leased as part of the Crown Lands in the late 1800s, and the side where Kaʻala Farms was leased to Manuel, which is part of the Manini family. Walk down the hillside here, you come to a little side branch of Kumaipo, and then there's a little flat area that goes over to Kumaipo. That's full of irrigated kalo terraces. So there's a set of irrigated kalo terraces down here, and a house site's nearby. And then right on the other side of the kalo terraces, there's a dam that dates from the sugarcane plantation era. And for years when we were working out here, the dam had a sizable pond behind it. And then there was a year when Kumaipo, it flooded really bad here, and Kumaipo had rocks and stuff that came down. It filled up the pond. And so the pond's not filled up right now. And it actually wiped out the road at the front of Kaʻala. But that pond, if it's cleaned out, would create some water that, again, you can use for planting and stuff like that.
Inside this pocket over here, that's pretty green.
Mm-hmm.
So that water is coming down. This is why we really understand the nature of water in these pockets. So all you gotta do is put your hand like this.
Yeah.
Put your hand like this, and that's gonna tell you right here is gonna be. That makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is Heiau Stream. Heiau Stream comes right through here.
Yeah. So that plantations did whatever they wanted to do. As you can see, there was no they just went ahead and grabbed the water, and they basically pushed the Makaha out. That broom. So there was a lot of water. So we're gonna make the argument.
But you're now in the irrigated kalo area of this landscape. So out there is the sweet potato and the dryland fields. Now as you have irrigated kalo in spots in here, in intervening spots you have some dryland fields. But the irrigated kalo is the house sites are on high points. So out there the houses are just scattered or out on the landscape. When you get in irrigated kalo areas, you want to use all the land that you can get water to. So the houses tend to be nearby up above. And so remember that when you go into any upper valley in Hawaii, if it hasn't been altered yet, and you'll see kind of low points, like the valley will go like this and you'll have a flat here. The flat, look at the grass. If the grass is flat and rises up, you're going to find the walls for the terraces. And on high points, you're going to find the houses. And if you know that, you can find these places pretty easily. So if you can convince Board of Water Supply to give you a little bit of water back, literally, you know, there's sets of kalo fields that kind of descend, and you could start to farm the kalo fields right below us, and then the water would drop back then in the Kumaipo and go down Kumaipo. Below us, when the Board of Water Supply put in the road, the archaeologist that did a survey said there's nothing out there. Yeah. Literally, you can throw a stone over the edge and you're in the middle of irrigated kalo fields. So, you know, if you know, like putting some of these fields back into kalo, that's okay because we've already mapped them. We've done some excavations to get radiocarbon dates and stuff, but we've got the information, so now you could start to use parts of the kalo fields again.
Tell me, like, the bottom, there was a spring here.
And there probably multiple springs. So there were at least a couple of springs that fed these awai, because the awai come right up to near the road.
Okay.
And so the water came down into the awai from either under the road or above the road.
So if you find the awai, that'll tell you that awai once was fed.
Yep.
So if we search, we go inside there, if we can find, and awai means rocks, you can see that it was channeling water, then you know that somewhere above it was the puna vai. It's like day and night, yeah. I mean, obviously, when the vai comes over, the ua comes over, it just drops. That's why this is a curtain of mist. That's why Kaʻala, the moʻolelo, is a place of dew that collects dew. So you can see all that dew is what's, and you can see the difference. Just look at this, the greenery, yeah. So we know that this had, you know, a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons when these wildfires come in, they don't come back this way because the tree line is, Kumaipo's got little ponds in it still. And so but the tree line is a green line that prevents the fires from coming up unless they go up above and come back.
Yeah, that's the danger of the fire. The fire eats 1 year, takes down trees, and then what that happens is the grass comes back. The next fire comes in another so many 100 yards, it takes down trees, the grass. So eventually, it can destroy the entire watershed. This is why we have to reverse that process.
And the other thing you have to remember, there's burials out there. Is a lot of the burials are going to be near house sites. So like in house yards, or near, like if you just have a platform with no surrounding wall, there's potentially burials nearby. And so that's when you kind of, and so that's just something you gotta, for long range, you gotta have some kind of protocol for how you're gonna deal with that.
But mahalo Pākē for joining us and capturing our moʻolelo.
Mahalo me ke aloha. Wai sishu no ke no wai. Tam hainyan oi tam.
Okay. So all you guys that are interns now, you're starting to get a feel for the land. So that's really important in the, you know, like the modern sense. You know, people aren't out farming and stuff, but you really have to understand what's out here and how people lived in the past. You have to really have a feel for the land. So next to Kaʻala, when you go that away, when the fire burned it out, is you can see all the terraces dropping down. And the high school excavated out there, and there's underlying terraces under the top ones. And you could see the black soil change. But Upper Valley's probably had kind of relatively shallow water, but it's flowing through. And again, everybody knew how to do this. Every household knew how to arrange it so the engineering so the water is going through.
Everybody was here has a purpose. We've landed here. It was predestined by our ancestors. So you're here for a reason. And Ross is, his knowledge is deep, and and like for us, we got to transfer that knowledge. Yeah. So it's very important that we, adopt these things and then figure out how we're going to manage this.
Yeah, the more you hear about this stuff, the more knowledgeable you get. Whether you choose to sort of follow that path or not, the knowledge of basically of Hawaiians in the past will provide you information to go forward with. So
We didn't know what we were doing. We just knew that it was something that had to be done.
Nice.
There's so much rock and stuff that's been pushed, and they were in there with big bulldozers. And again, somewhere in there, he covered up the burials on the house side. So. Moʻolelo is a term for multiple fields. And then you had dryland fields or kula fields. And the only place we found kula fields is essentially, you can see back there and it gets really rocky. That's the transition between the rocky slope where they were planting sweet potatoes and stuff, and then you get out in here to the irrigated kalo fields. That's the obvious thing about Hawaiian farming is the water, irrigated kalo, is the water always gets returned to the stream. Whereas today, the water goes wherever. But basically that knowledge existed here. And a lot of people don't realize that. That's engineering knowledge at the commoner level. And pretty impressive engineering knowledge. So this is the area for the fire remediation that you're clearing and replanting.
That's why we're trying to run water from Honua across and feed this dry riverbed Kumaipo and make sure it's green, because when there's fire and it jumps over, it'll just burn up the valley. And as you guys could see, there was a lot of burnt trees on our way here to learn about the culture and the history behind it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So
Yeah, so when you find this stuff, bag it up, and then at some point I'll try to get out and take a look at it and stuff. But yeah, that's important for giving you a clue to what was happening here.
So you'll be in charge of the archaeology, okay?
Yay.
Kaala's young incoming archaeologist, geologist. So there's going to be a lot of things. Well, we're going to wrap it. The next one is that we're going to have to go after the water. That's going to be another hike. So stay tuned. Mahalo, everybody.